Mbukeli silishaye ke noma selishayile ihora lesishiyagalombili ekseni kanti manje ke singena ehoreni lesithathu manje ke singenela ke elesithathu ihora njengoba sesiphumile kulo elesibili nokungele kugcina ke ngci ngaphambi kokuthi ke sikushiye mbukeli ukuthi nje angibuza ukuthi uma ngempela ingasuki impi ingathwa nje yasuka lo muntu ozwana naye ngempela ngayanini empini ngisho yena kanye lo zamthilili wakho noma ngabaleka athi galo yephuka umdidila loluhlelo uthi yena nje angaya egijime abuye phila asikho sure asazi Makholi sesiku second hour
hayi uphosela ntoni
how
first second third kanye ndimo ngakwazi ubala
hayi ungawazi ubala 8 o'clock go
8 o'clock
yes
hayi ngiyogqibela kaloku sana akho second akho first siyayiqala siyayiqonqotha also right
hayi great
ndiyakubona sana kuphansi kwalonto ikutheni ngathi khona into ezibane zisiwa nje wenza ntoni phansi kwetafile
dilungiselela uhlelo ngenza sure ukuthi ababukele emakhaya bathola i-top notch ekhaya
ngase bangayibona into engapha ya Litshilo igwitshe kaloku siyiqala siyiqukumbela iure yethu yokugqibela osibambe ngazibini kaloku ngokuba oko ninathi noba siye evenkileni nihleli nithe zava sibamba ngazo zozibini ngenene asiyonto ngaphandle kweni si ekhaya jikelele isendimla ke ukholosa unonkanyezi kalubisi siyaqhubeka kaloku siziqika kweliqonda nenzwakazi yapha kwamakeba siqinisekisa kaloku into yokubana sikuphakela zitshisa nakulena ke iure senza lento esidume ngayo masitsha iqhuma
Amaphoyisa kwaZulu-Natal athi isikhona inqubekela phambili ekhona ngecala lokubulawa komculi obenedumela kakhulu Kenan Forbes owaziwa ngelika Ekhaya kanye nomngani wakhe.
Iqela leSpringboks ezaqhubisana neScotland kumdlalo walo wokuvula indebe yehlabathi yombhoxo ka-2023 eFrance libhengeziwe.
Lochani, good day. Nilochiswa ngubongi ngwakwamthweni. Ngithi kini ke babukeli ekhaya, bukelani ekhaya jikelele. Qobe ngamalanga kube ngumvulo, bekube ngulesihlanu. Baniphathele ezemidlalo, baniphathele indaba, baniphathele nomgosi imbala. Ungaphundwa, bukela.
Amapolisa kwiphondo laKwaZulu-Natal athi aqhuba kakuhle kwityala lokubulawa komculi uKenan Forbes nowaziwa ngelika Ekhaya nomhlobo wakhe uTibelo Tibbs Mutswane. Esesibini ke sadutyulwa sabulawa kwisithile esidumileyo sasebusuku eThekwini ngoFebruary. Umkomishanala ke wamapolisa kwiphondo laseKZN uLieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi unqilile ngethuba ethetha nonondaba eThekwini ukuba bawufumene umpi osetyenziswe ukubulalwa esisibini.
We've identified at least a couple of vehicles that were used. Some of vehicles were used as getaway, some of vehicles that were used as spotters, some of the vehicles that might have been used by people after the fact that we suspect that they are suspect in this regard. We've identified at least one firearm that has been used and positively identified to have shot and killed Mr. Forbes on that eve. We are and such are in our position as well. And we as SAPS have, as I said, identified few individuals that we're going to maybe after discussing with the NPA, we might then start bringing them in.
I-African Transformation Movement eyaziwa ngele ATM isicele ukuthi kuvote ngokuyimfihlo odabeni olumayelana nomvikelo omphakathi osamisiwe ubusisiwe Mkhwebane advocate. Leli qembu ke lafaka isicelo kusomlomo weParliament likazwelonke uNosiviwe Maphisa Nqakula encwadini ebhalwe ngomhla zine kuMandulo. IParliament likazwelonke kulindeleke ukuthi ke livote ngomsomluko. IParliament liqinisekisile futhi nokuthi lisithole lisicelo nokuthi uMaphisa Nqakula usasibhekisisa lesi sicelo. I-ATM ibeke izathu ezahlukene zokuthi kungani ifuna ivote eliyimfihlo. Leli qembu lithi ukukhishwa kaMkhwebane kwanqunywa kusengaphambili futhi ANC kungenzeka isebenzise uhla lweqembu ukuphoqa isiphakamiso sokususwa kwakhe. Ithi iANC, iDA kanye neFreedom Front Plus abahambisana nokususwa kaMkhwebane sebehlangene baneyihlale engaphezulu kwamakhulu amathathu ezeqa isibalo esidingekayo ke samavoti angu 267 ukususa uMkhwebane. I-ATM ithi uma isicelo sawo sokuvota kuyimfihlo singamukelwa izothatha ke inyathelo zomthetho ukuphikisa isinqumo sikaSomlomo. Leli qembu liphindela lacela uMaphisa Nqakula ukuthi akhoxise ucutshungulo kwalombiko ukuze akwazi ukuthatha isinqumo esiphusile, kanti uma kungenjalo avumeleke leli qembu ukuthi luyise lolu daba enkantolo.
The ADM is calling for a secret ballot on the matter to safeguard democratic processes and democracy. As the African Transformation Movement, we believe that the oath of office and/or affirmation taken by members of parliament is not an inconsequential occurrence, but a signed contract with the people of South Africa to protect their country and not a particular party and those they deem to be above the law. The Speaker must grant the secret ballot to protect members of parliament from the lynching reported coming for them, as was the case with those with a dissenting voice in the past.
Inhloko kumbutho weSADC ujongene nolonyulo eZimbabwe uNevis Mumba umemelele abo bagxeka ingxelo yayo kuba bavumele iqumrhu kuba liqhube. Mumba ke uthi isityholo sabagxeki sokuba iqela labakhe imkhanyo belinomkhethe asinaziseko.
SADC has got guidelines that it follows. We cannot include in our statement any line which does not reflect or get its energy from three instruments. Instrument number one is the Constitution of Zimbabwe. The second instrument we use is the Electoral Act of Zimbabwe. And the third one is the guidelines and principles of SADC, which were composed by all SADC nations, including Zimbabwe. And the SADC guidelines and principles make it very clear. We do not go there to formulate laws for the member states, but we are given the mandate in the booklet to interrogate any law that impedes in a free and fair election. If there is a law in any member state that takes away the liberties and the freedoms of people to fully express themselves in choosing the leader that they want, we take note of that law and mention it in our report that this law stands in the way of freedoms that are supposed to be guaranteed to the members or that are citizens of the member states. So we are not interfering with the laws of any country. It is within the guidelines. It is within, and we didn't say change this law or change that law. We just outlined laws on delimitation, and there was delimitation, and it was a point of conflict. The ballot papers, when they should be released through transparency, we had to go back to the Constitution of Zimbabwe to see what it says. It talks about transparency. And we noticed that there are other laws that were enacted to block that transparency. We didn't tell them what to do with that law, but we are mandated to point it out that this law stands in the way of a democratic process, and it could actually affect the outcome or the legitimacy of the outcome of the election.
There's pressure right now to discredit the report by those who are aggrieved, and they went as far as saying your proximity to the opposition in Zimbabwe can be a factor. How do you respond to those allegations? Let
me make it clear. I think that our brothers in Zimbabwe need to understand that everybody means well for them. There is no one who goes there with a mission to destabilize or to disturb the Zimbabwean people. Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, SADC, we are one people. And our job is to make sure that we talk about those things that are going to improve the way we serve our communities. And that's what SADC does. We don't go there with personal agendas. For them to go and calling some people Western puppets, saying that probably the head of mission knows the opposition leader, I think it's unfortunate and it's mischievous because they know that. Even if I had known the opposition, I don't have power to change a sentence in the statement because I am not the one who writes the statement. It is written through a scientific process of more than 25 people that work on that document to make sure that it's legit. So I think those are challenges that our brothers are facing, and our advice really is as follows, that they should not shoot the messenger I think our colleagues in Zimbabwe should do what every other member nation does when they are challenged on the process of elections. There is a channel within the SADC framework within which Zimbabwe can take their grievances to Gaborone, to the headquarters, through the heads of mission, through the heads of states when they meet, and they can talk about how they feel about the report. They can protect themselves, they can defend themselves, but not fighting on the streets. And I would like to thank and congratulate the leadership of Zambia and the people of Zambia for not reacting to the provocation that has been coming from Zimbabwe. You must understand, Sophie, this is not the first time Zambia is suffering these things. You know, the historical situation is clear that Zambia gave its very best and has always given its very best to Zimbabwe. And it's not part of this argument and debate, because this is a SADC issue. Zambia lost lives. Infrastructure was bombed by Ian Smith in order to attain the freedom of Zimbabwe. So our hearts are into Zimbabwe. Our hearts are into the success of Zimbabwe. Kenneth Kaunda laid down everything that he could in order for Zimbabwe to be free. So we cannot say that we are against Zimbabwe. And yet, shortly after that, they called Kenneth Kaunda a Western puppet. When they differed a little bit with the late president. And then the other president whom I served when I was vice president, President Levin Mwanawasa, was also called a Western puppet, just because he differed with one thing or the other in ZANU-PF or in Zimbabwe. Now they have come after our new president, Hakainde Hichilema, calling him a Western puppet. I think that is totally irrelevant. We as Zambians, we are only puppets of our people, including Zimbabwe and SADC. That's why their freedoms and independence was all about the blood of Zambians and the deaths of Zambian people in order for Zimbabwe to get free. We cannot turn around and start to destroy a country that, you know, we helped so much with our blood to ensure that our brothers were free. So we advise our brothers that let them answer the challenges of the report. Let them not go after personal assassination of innocent individuals. President Hakainde Hichilema never wrote a single statement or a sentence in that statement. I did not write a single sentence in that statement, although I am the head of mission. So they are shooting at the wrong people. That final report is now in place, and we appeal to our brothers in Zimbabwe. Let's not have street fights when we have got legal channels that we can use to resolve this situation. We need each other, and we need to be united as SADC. We cannot be reacting to a report like this, because now it raises concerns. Why are they overreacting to this report? Why can't they use the normal process to justify and vindicate themselves?
Kusanjalo okhulumela umongameli waseZimbabwe uGeorge Charamba ugxeke inhloko yeSADC Election Observer Mission uNevas Mumba ngokuthi weqe isivumelwano seSADC mayelana lokuqoqa umbiko wokhetho lweSADC olumayelana lokhetho lwaseZimbabwe.
We are seeing an enthusiastic chairman of a process which is in fact a SADC one. He does not report to the Zambian people, which is why we all were flabbergasted to find him spending as much as more than 2 hours on a national television. Who is he reporting to? This is a SADC mission, for goodness sake, appointed by the chairman of a SADC organ, not a SADC summit, SADC organ, right? What it means is the preliminary report still has to, one, become a final report. And when it becomes a final report, it still has to be tabled before a council of ministers, which is really a body which brings together foreign ministers of SADC.
Of the trade?
Yes. No, it is actually, it could be larger actually, right? So there's a council of ministers, and it's probably meeting around February, March, right? Then when that has happened, then the foreign ministers must look at that report. They will then push it upwards to the SADC Troika, which will be around June or thereabout. Right? It still has to come to summit.
Yes.
And this will be about August next year. Right? It is only at summit that report is tabled, discussed, amended, endorsed or rejected. And I have news for you. That SADC summit will be here in Zimbabwe. And it is the summit that will ensure that the president of Zimbabwe, who presently is the deputy chair of SADC, then becomes the chair of SADC. So really, all these noises are unprocedural, first and foremost. But they have a constituency they are meant to appease and placate, which is the constituency that in fact sent us a hard gun, pretending to be a chairperson. But it also teaches us a lesson. When you have a process that creates a head of state, that creates a government, that creates peace or creates war in a society, does it make sense for us to leave decisions around the constitution of a SADC observer mission to a single person minding a subsidiary body of summit? Maybe that's a conversation which we must start as Zimbabwean just as well. And let's look in the crystal ball. We have a minimum of 3 nations who are set to go for elections. We can't proceed to Eswatini for their next elections with this mess, where a chairman decides to abuse his office and destabilize a nation. Right? But let me make it very, very clear. The president has made it clear to his counterpart in Zambia that whatever the excesses of the chairman of the observer mission of SADC, that should never be allowed to injure the excellent relations between Zambia and Zimbabwe, between President Mnangagwa and President Hichilema. We must protect that bilateral relationship, but use the weaknesses we have seen in this mission to set right that which has to be corrected within our procedures in SADC. And that is the mission ahead.
Sisekuza kaloku eziphathelene nalapha ekhaya. Inkokheli yombutho phambili ophikisayo i-Citizens Coalition for Change eZimbabwe, uNelson Chamisa uthi umbutho wakhe ubambelele kuluvo lokhaba iziphumo zolunyulo. uChamisa ke uthethe nomhleli wendaba walapha ekhaya uSophie Mukwena. Uthi ke baza kuthi qolo ukufuna uncedo nanjengoko amalungu abo eqinisekile ngokupheleleyo ukuba unyule aluzange lube nobulungisa.
The election was fundamentally flawed. The election was and is a fraud and a sham. And for that reason, any outcome out of this process that is disputed is a disputed outcome. We did not sign our forms. We did not consent to the outcome because we had irregularities around the statistics, cases of inflation, manipulation, and in some cases, clear failure on the part of ZEC to explain why certain anomalies were there. So Mr. Mnangagwa's figure is not a confirmed figure. We dispute that figure. We do not agree that he is the president. We won in the election free and out of any encumbrance. And of course, we had an unfree and an unfair election. And you are aware that we have made this position very clear. All the observer mission groups have indicated that the election in Zimbabwe was so shambolic. People did not vote. In urban areas, it was a case of undermined and suppressed voting, and voter suppression was a big issue. In the rural areas, people were frog-marched and commandeered to vote, almost intimidation at various polling stations using...
Is it not too little too late?
Well, you can say that President Mnangagwa is in the office. For you, yes. But for the people of Zimbabwe, they chose a leader, and they want to see that leader whom they chose declared. And they want to make sure that in as much as they chose the leader in a very complex environment, a suppressed environment, they would want a way of reversing or dealing with that environment so that we are able to see the punctuation of the will of the people. As far as we are concerned as the people of Zimbabwe, you can tell there was no celebration across the whole country. People are very clear. They know what they voted for. They know what they want. Mr. Mnangagwa can declare himself 1,000,000 times as president, but as far as we are concerned, he is not our president or people's president. ZEC declared, but not Zimbabwe elected.
3 heads of state and representatives from different countries were present at the inauguration, a clear indication that they've accepted the results. Your councillors took oath of office today in Bulawayo.
Well, look, the issue of being sworn in has nothing to do with the credibility of the election. The bottom line in the fundamental position is that it is a flawed election. We rejected the outcome of that election, and we would want the elections in Zimbabwe to be finally dealt with so that we do not have disputes and contestations, election in, election out. And for that to happen, we need a political arrangement, a political agreement on the reforms, institutional reforms, electoral reforms, constitutional reforms. And to some extent, these reforms have to speak to institutions that are going to superintend the issue of elections in Zimbabwe going forward. But as for now, we have said we do not accept that Mr. Mnangagwa is the legitimate president of Zimbabwe. It is within our right, and we have already indicated to ZEC. That's why we did not sign, and that's why we have not agreed. So it's a disputed outcome. It doesn't matter how many people come to the inauguration. It's a sham inauguration out of a sham election, and it remains so.
But you didn't push for the reforms before the elections, because many people were saying that without reforms, you are going to have a problem as a country.
We did push for reforms. You are aware that we shouted our voices hoarse. We even knocked at SADC's doors to try and have reforms. That has not been possible. But we are aware that ours is a struggle. We will continue to fight. If you look at this sham election, our ground forces did fantastically well. We managed to sweep in 33 out of the 34 urban councils, almost 33 mayors out of the 34. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept a sham election just because we've won. We won even the presidents, but doesn't mean that we have to accept it. We won at parliamentary level, all the urban areas and in the rural areas in Matabeleland, but doesn't mean that we have to accept, because certain issues were not followed, processes were not followed, and we continue to say this election cannot stand. It must be reversed in terms of the way the people voted. And that is our position. That position is backed by the observer mission groups in terms of what they observed on the ground. To call it an election is actually a misnomer. It was coercion, intimidation, manipulation, in some cases inflation, outright a criminal act. In fact, it was a criminal enterprise. That is why we are rejecting the outcome and want the outcome to be respected, and we need to be able to have a political understanding and dialogue to resolve the issues that are outstanding.
The Constitution of Zimbabwe is clear in terms of when you are aggrieved or the electoral process, you have to go to court. You didn't go to court.
Well, there's no need for us to go to the court. The SADC is a court. The court of public opinion has already made a determination that this election is a sham. There's no need for us to waste time by plowing the same field twice. And we have been down this road. You know, in 2018, we went to the court, and we know the disposition and attitude of the court. So we don't want to waste time. We want to resolve issues. This is a political issue. It's an electoral matter. And there are remedies beyond just wasting time through going round and round in circles. We need to resolve this issue, and there has to be a political will, and political will shall be there. We have a million options to pursue to make sure that the issue of elections in Zimbabwe is resolved. Zimbabweans want change. They want a new government. They want a legitimate government. They want their own government. And they've not been able to have that government because Mr. Mnangagwa was declared by ZEC erroneously out of a sham process and irregularities that were evidenced by the Zimbabweans themselves and also by the region. SADC, AU, all observer mission groups had a clear, negative report on the obtainings on the ground. And you witnessed it, journalists did, we witnessed it as a people. And we're all agreed, there's no debate about that. The issue is, what do we do with this kind of an illegitimate outcome?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Where to from here?
Well, of course, we are engaging Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans are very clear. They understand where we are going. We are very clear that we will make sure that we express ourselves peacefully, constitutionally, until there is a legitimate government in this country. As we speak, there is no legitimate government in Zimbabwe. There's a disputed and a self-declared, through ZEC, president, and that must be corrected. Otherwise, this country cannot move because there is an illegitimate government.
They are saying, some of your critics, that you don't have the necessary reforms to challenge the ZEC in terms of their pronouncement of the election results.
Anybody can say anything. The bottom line is that we managed to win this sham election. You can't say we are disorganized when we have the number of MPs we have managed to have in a disputed, in a very unfree and unfair election. When we have won the way we have won, when we have millions of supporters who supported us, that's not evidence of a disorganized party. We are very organized, and we are happy that the people of Zimbabwe believe in us. And they are very clear that time is coming and change is coming to Zimbabwe. It doesn't matter who chooses to abandon us and not give us the solidarity. At the end of the day, we know that nobody can stop a time whose moment has come. Change is coming to Zimbabwe, and we'll fight for it. And we are ready to die for it.
Ezingena manje ke mbukeli zithi akasekho emhlabeni uRaymond Ackerman ongusomabhizinisi oqavile. uAckerman nguyena phela wasungula isitolo iPick n Pay, kanti ke ushone eseneminyaka engamashumi ayisishagalolunye nambili ubudala. uRaymond wasungula isitolo iPick n Pay ngonyaka u1967. Eminyaka emininingwane ngokushona kukaAckerman uzobe usuyithola ke mbukeli kwezinye iziteshi zalapha eSABC ngokuqhubeka kosuku. Angithi phela thina la sisakaza ngazo zonke izilimi ezikhona lapha eNingizimu Afrika. Okwamanje ke mbukela sinje ke qunga sayitolo sizobuya emva komzuzwana. Siphetho sikamkele mbukeli Ekhaya Jikelele. Ake singene manje kwezemidlalo. Umqeqeshi wabanyana uDesiree Ellis memezele iqembu elizobhekana neMelika emidlalweni emibili yokungcweka kulenyanga.
To better leagues.
Ibanyana izobuyela enkundleni ngasekupheleni kwephezulu. Elakuleli lizodlala imidlalo emibili yomngane neqembu laseMelika elikleliswe labasendaweni yesithathu emhlabeni. Leli iqembu laseMelika libalwa kanye namaqembu amahlanu asekhale emuka nendebe yomhlaba.
The expectations never stop. It's always been there. I think already the expectation getting into the national team is high, and then obviously we know we're a results-driven country, you know, and the fans don't expect anything less. And all I can say is that this team will put in that effort, will put in that performance to possibly get the result that we want.
uEllis uthi ngenzo omkhulu umehluko ukusungula iligi kuleli.
It's important that we get that professional league. It's important that players train at a certain level every day, not having to worry about going to work.
Lemidlalo izoba ingxenye yokuyilolongela ukuhlungela ama-Olympics ezodlalwa ngenyanga ezayo.
Also want to reward, you know, the players that were at the World Cup because they did magnificently, and you also want to have that consistency, considering that, you know, you have a qualifier coming up not so far away.
Umdlalo oqala uzodlalelwa eCincinnati mhla zingamashumi kwephezulu, kanti owesibili uzodlalelwa eChicago emva kwensuku ezimbili idlalo oqala. Yombili lemidlalo izoyisakaza bukhoma iSABC.
Iqela leSpringboks elizakuqhubisana neScotland kumdlalo walo wokuvula indebe yehlabathi yombhoxo ka2023 eFrance libhekeziwe. uDe Klerk ke ngomnye wabadlali abali11 abagcine kwindawo zabo kwiqela elibethe iNew Zealand kwiveki ezimbini ezidlulileyo. Umqeqeshi uJacques Nieberg udibane neScotland ekwindawo yesihlanu kwihlabathi. iBoks ke zibekwe kwindawo yesibini kwaye abakhuphisana nabo iIreland kwindawo yokuqala. Ngamaqela amabini kuphela nokuthi adlulele kwi-quarterfinals. Lunyeke kuphela utshintsho kwiqela leSpringbok. uJasper Fils uthatha indawo kwinombolo kwisibhozo kuDwayne Vermeulen oya ebhentshini. Utshintsho lwasemva lunoDamian D'Alende noJesse Kriel bedibana embindini webala. Kwaye ke uChelsea Colby ubuya ephikweni lesikhohlo endaweni kaMakazole Mapimpi. uKanan Moody kunye neLocke uJan Klein khange bathathelwe ingqalelo ekuthethweni ngenxa yokonzakala okungephi. uNienaba ke uthi ulindele ukungquzulana neScotland kwaye kubalekile ukuba iqela likhawuleze lisifumane isingqe salo.
Abazemidlalo esifundeni Nelson Mandela Bay eEastern Cape bakholelwa ukuthi amabhokobhoko azongene nokuzethemba emidlalweni wawo wokuqala wendebe yomhlaba yebhola lombhoxo ngesonto.
Iphondo leMpuma Koloni lidumile kumbhoxo kwelilizwe kwaye abadlali abaninzi baphuhliswe kwaliphondo kwiminyaka emininzi edlulileyo. Elinye iqala lalomdlalo yinkonde uThemba Ludwaba. Luka Ludwaba wazibandakanya neqela eKwaru ngonyaka bo-1960 kwaye unamava kumbhoxo. Uthi unalo ithemba lokuba amabhokobhoko aza kubuya nayo indebe yeWebb Ellis.
Mna ndi-expect into yoba sizayiwina iWorld Cup according to i-performance endibabona abadlala ngayo.
Iqela lombhoxo lasezwide i-African Bombers apho ukapteyini wamabhokobhoko Siya Kolisi wayedlalela lona linalo ithemba lokuba iqela lasekhaya liza kufikela kumdlalo wamagqibela kankqoyi.
Hayi amabhokobhoko aredi kakhulu. Remember kaloku especially after la game siyokugqibela sidlalileyo neNew Zealand.
Naye owayesokuba ngumphathi wabadlali bamabhokobhoko uZola Yeye uthi akuzukuba lula ukukhusela le ndebe yehlabathi yombhoxo kodwa amabhokobhoko anamaqhinga amatsha.
Lamava ndawafumanayo yayi sisithebe esinokukhulumanco esinovuyo ukufumana ithuba ndibe yinxalenye nombhoxo endiwudlala ndimncinci ndafikela kwiqondo eliphezulu.
Lo mdlalo kunye neScotland uza kuqala nge-6:15 emva kwemini yangecawa. Ndinguzolani Moya weendaba ze-SABC ndiseGqeberha kwiphondo leMpuma Koloni.
Sikwamkeleke mbukele Ekhaya Jikelele seze safika ke leso sikhathi esazigahle ukuthi kade silindile nokuyisikhathi sama trends. Namhlanje kholosa sino #sasa no #bafuthi.
Sino #sasa #bafana kunye no #nesfas. Because phosa amehlo mbukeli sijonga into yokubana kuqhubeka ntoni pha ku #sasa. Amawaka-waka ke mbukeli abaxhamli besibonelelo sikarhulumente kuye kwafuneka ukuba babuyele emakhaya bengakhange kanti uba bafumana intlawulo zakwasasa kule veki ngenxa yeengxaki zobuchwepheshe ezibathintelayo ekutsaleni imali kwi-ATM nakwiivenkile ezithengiswayo. Bake sive ke mbukeli into yokubana baphefumule besithini na kodwa ke ndiyathanda into yokubana ungene kwi-statement wena neyokusingaphambi koba sijonge uba sona sithini.
Ya kholosa estatementeni esakhishwa ngolwesibili phela abazamaposi bathi ingqinamba zemshini izona ezaba imbangela ukuthi bangaholela abanye abantu abahola le mali yesibonelelo sikahulumeni nokuyimali yangama350 amarandi kodwa beke ibe isiqinisekisa abantu abahola le mali ukuthi ithimba labo lisebenza ngokuyikhandla ukuxazulula ke lenkinga. Ake sizwe ngoba ke kwachwaze inkundleni zokuxhumana ngalokhu ngoba siyazi ukuthi iningi labantu alisebenzi kholosa lidlimbu yangothi ngakho vele Nkosi yami ukungafinyelela kwale mali ngesikhathi kubona kusho ukuthi ke nemizi ikuzolala kungadliwe emakhaya. Ake sizwe ukuthi ke baphendule bathini ke ku-x.com mayelana no #sasa. Mrs. Verb uthi what SASSA is doing to elders is extremely sad. Watching them return groceries because their cards have no money is sad, man. Ish. Uyasho lapha yana Mrs. Verb uthi kubhlungu lokho okwenzekayo Nkosi yami ebantwini abadala uthole bese esitolo bethi bayathenga sebebuyisele emuva igrocery yabo ngenxa ukuthi amakhadi decline imali ayikho.
Honorable Yachinokbana, if the ANC has made the ground fertile for young people to work, our grandparents were not going to need this SASSA thing. We are from Resishin Dokbana, Ubanga Bambuto Laulayo, Ebeye Wenza, Wavulama Tuba for Amanda Bach, Dokbana Bakwaz, Dokbana Basebenze, Banga Kali, Gomba Wenzuelang Show, Besing Azubona, Omakulube to be city, ye, Sifuna, Isbonelelo, Sika SASSA, Tungambes Jong and Mukeli Dokbana, Abanye Bape from Lebesitini Pago X.com. Unoma Russia Oyachi Dogbana. So SASSA only realized afternoon that they are having technical problems while our grandparents stood on those queues from 4 a.m. such inconvenience for the elderly. Uyatsho into yokubana kukanjani kaloku into yokubana usasa abone sekuyi afternoon apha ebona into yokubana ngoku banebingxaki yochwepheshe ngelo xesha omakhulu bethu oko bememile ukusukela ngo4 ekseni kodwa bona bazokubona sekusemini into yokubana azisebenzi imishini yabo kanye banengxaki abayitshoyo yobuchwepheshe. Uyatsho into yokubana ibhlungu kakhulu into abayenzayo for abantu abadala.
Ikhona ke ne-hashtag yethu yesibili ethi #BafanaBafana. Kuney'nkulumo phela ey'nkundleni zokuxhumana njengoba kubonakala sengathi iy'nkampani lezi ey'xhasa amaqembu zixhasa kakhulu amabhokobhoko kuneBafana. Amabhokobhoko azoqala imidlalo yokuvikela indebe yayo yomhlaba kanti iBafana yona siyazi phela ukuthi izotholana phezulu neNamibia kanye neDRC.
Siyabetha-bethana ke wena mamtshali nawe mbukeli izimvo zabantu pha kumaqonga onxibelelwano. Abanye bathi hayi ayenzanga kwanto iBafana kule minyaka idlulileyo ngelixa ke iqela lombhoxo liqhuba kakuhle kwaye lizintshatsheli ezikhuselayo. Masive ke into yokubana ukubetha-bethana kwezimvo zabantu pha ku-x.com kuthini na. Ukalabash uthi it's a performance issue sisi. Bafana must learn to win important games or matches. Uyatsho into yokubana noko umba apha i-performance kwaye nje iBafana mayifunde ukuwina okanye ukuphumelela kwimidlalo engathi noko ibalulekile. Princess uthini?
Uphefumule no Princess uthi the way private schools and companies smother us with Springboks content ahead of matches but go mute when Bafana plays never ceases to amuse me. Usho khona ukuthi hayi indlela iy'nkampani kanye nezikole ey'tetemukisa ngayo amabhokobhoko mengabe ezodlala hayi ngiyakutshela kodwa umuntu uyabheka makudlala iBafana lokho ke akwenzeki. Khona futhi nomunye ukugcina uphefumulile lapha ku #Bafana uLebuhang uthi but you can't put Bafana and Springboks on the same sentence. For the past 18 years iBafana has achieved nothing, zero. Uthi yena cha ngeke uzubeke phela iBafana neSpringbok kubeke nje lokuza emgqeni owodwa noma kubeka endaweni eyodwa ngoba iminyaka eyi18 yonke iBafana ingathola uthoma ngabe qhathaniswa ke neBafana noma nama Springboks. Kanti ke mangabe ke sesibheka i-hashtag yethu yokugcina ukusasekhona uEric osaphawula ngeBafana uthi when Bafana actually starts to win the majority of their matches they can get some of the spotlight too. Until then they can sit tight. Uthi nje ngapha iBafana uma ngabe siqala naye ukuthi wine i-majority of imidlalo yabo hayi ke nabo sebengakuthola ke ukuthi babekwe ebalazweni. Singakafiki nje ke leso sikhathi uthi hayi abahlale phansi nje badonsa umoya. #NSFASI. Isikhungo esixhasa abafundi ke lesi NSFASI asikaka abakhokheli bonke abafundi okumele ukuthi bahlomule. Nakhona ke kuthiwa kuneyinkinga zemshini nokuholela ekutheni kubambezeleka ukukhokhwa kwale mali. Shuthi nje istory esifanayo Nkosi yami nesasa.
Okuke embukeli kuza emva kokuba kusithiwa ingxaki yobuchwepheshe ibingunobangela wokulibaziseka kwenhlawulo kwiveke ephelileyo. Kanti ke umbutho EDA umemelele umphathiswa wemfundo ephakamileyo uBlade Nzimande ukuba athathele amanyathelo ngokuchasene NSFAS ngokungabhatali ngexesha abafundi. Ibhlungu kakhulu lento mbukeli kuba kaloku nalapha kuyachaphazela into yokubana hey isengunobangela ubuchwepheshe obumasive ke pha ku-x.com baphefumule besithini ngalomba. Miss Conning uthi can we please get our allowances? It's been months now. Where's you guys ignore my emails? When I call you, your number is always busy. At my NSFAS, on behalf of UNISA students, can we please get our allowance issues sorted? We voted for change at Julius S. Malima, #NSFAS, Converse must fall. Uyatsho into yokubana noko mani uyacela ebongoza pha kuNSFAS into yokubana mabafumane ii-allowances zabo noko uyatsho into yokubana zinyanga oko ziqenqeleka. Uthi xa yefowuna okanye mhlawumbe ethumela imbalelwano ye-email hayi inamba ivele ibe bhizi okanye ke abe kanti akaphendulwa. Uyatsho into yokubana uyacela nje into yokubana imiba yabo ye-allowance mayilungiswe. Chuncembe sijonge ke abanye baphefumule besithini. uLasbon uthi the very same thing is happening to NSFAS students at the Northwest University. Some received their allowances late and traveling students, to be specific, have not received their allowances. And this comes after Norako came into the picture. This is really heartbreaking. Uyabona mbukeli into yokubana ngabafundi pha x.com bevakalisa isinqala sabo besithi into okubana lento iyenzeka uyatshula sibona into okubana the very same thing iyenzeka kubafundi abaphansi kweNSFAS pha kwi-University yase Northwest uyatsho into okubana abanye bazifumene i-allowances zabo emva kwexesha abanye nje kuthuleke kuthe cwaka uyatsho into okubana ibhlungu kakhulu lento abadlula kuyo chunce sijonge abanye bephefumule besithini uthini uTintswalo mamtshali
uTintswalo uthi it's scary how out of touch with reality certain people are, hey, cutting down social welfare and NSFAS without any alternative whilst there's millions of South Africans who rely on the very system is very telling of the kind of leadership that cabinet would be. Hey, ngosiyamaya abantu bayaphawula ezinkundleni zokuxhumana benelungelo impela lokuphawula ngoba lezi zinto azikho mnandi. Ukhona omunye phawulile mayelana nodaba lweNSFAS. Kihumuditswe Mashilwane uthi yena it's 3 months now with no allowance and co-invest tells me to be patient from last month till now. I'm still waiting. They don't even answer her calls anymore. NFAS doesn't even bother answering. Ukihu uthi yena it's been 3 months imali ngangeni nkosi yami wo ungabe benze njani cabanga usuhlezi kholose rest ulinde imali akwazi ukuyothenga grocery nothing
and abanye basuka emakhaya wafana abanye basuka kumakhaya abazi ukuthi abafundi okanye umntwana wakhe oxhomekeke nje pha kuphela kwisibonelelo soNSFAS ngoku xa kwenzeka izinto ezintshe ukuthi mhlawumbe abazali bazawungena ematyaleni ngenxa yoNSFAS kubhlungu kakhulu
because yabona uNSFAS phela usiza abantu vele isizathu sokuthi abantu baze ba-apply lo-NSFAS ngoba basuka ngithi bengakhoni vele ne-criteria yakhona kuwabantu mhlawumbe abanabazali abangenabazali abayintandane abanabazali abangasebenzi njalo njalo so vele nje ayikho abanayo imali akukho abangakupatanisa ngoba vele baphuma kuleyo mndeni njalo so nje kubhlungu khona
siyathemba kodwa
ke yes bangagcina isombululiwe le ndaba ukuthi bayithola imali yabo ke ngesikhathi ukuze bakwazi phela noconcentrate esikoleni nokufocus
because xa uzoba nengxaki zemali ngapha siyathemba into yokubana ukuphosa kwabo isinqala ngenene uNSFAS uzawufumanela kuba kwisivumelwano esawuchulumancisa abafundi nabazali nawo wonke umuntu obandekanyekayo kanti ngokumbukeli masithi qhuye evenkileni iqiniseka ophoswa kusekuninzi singiphathele khona.
Sibike sikwamukele mbukeli ekhaya Jikelele. Mbukeli phela kusenze ukuzatshwala ukuthi ke uqale umqhudelwano wendebe yomhlaba kwezebhola lombhoxo kanti phela liqokiwe ke neqembu lesizwe elizoyodlala khona le. Ibanyana kanye nebafana bona bazodlala ke imidlalo yokuncweka. Ukubheka nje ke lemidlalo kakhulukazi lo owamabhokobhoko sixhumana ngocingo nentatheli yezemidlalo ke lapha eSABC uSenzo S Mashikho. Mashikho sikubingelele sikwamukele ekhaya Jikelele.
Nokolo ngithatha isikhathi ngibingelele ukubonga babukeli ngibonga kakhulu nawe ukungiphathuka namhla.
Sibonge ngesikhathi sakho. Senzo amabhokobhoko azoqala imidlalo ke yendebe yomhlaba njengoba kuyiwona ayivikelayo angama defending champions. Ucabanga ukuthi ngabazokwazi yini kuyivikela le ndebe amabhokobhoko?
Ngiyethi isikhathi senjabulo sesifikile kulo qembu lesivele amabhokobhoko ngoba i-total commitment ngiloko lesikade ukuthi siyoba sikubona kulo qembu lamabhokobhoko akukho lelo balikushiya ngaphandle liyawunikela ngako konke lenako phakathi enkundleni emathuba iNingizimu Afrika ivikele indebe yomhlaba sonke siNingizimu Afrika sinawo emathemba ukuthi iNingizimu Afrika iyawukhona ukuthi ivikele indebe yomhlaba kepha nakhona angeke nje kube lehambo lelimalulana kancane ngani ngoba wonke amaqembu lakhona lapha eFrance asuke nje atimisele ukukhoza iupset atimisele nawo ukuthi adlale kahle kakhulu performe athi kanza adlulela kwesinye isigaba lesilandzelako inzima yethu iyaqala siNingizimu Afrika kulembela sonto ngesondo nasibukana neScotland njengoba vele selimetele lelo qembu lebaqasa nomdlalo lebadlali bashumi nesihlanu phakathi lapha first class leto bahlanza imidlalo bengemashumi lasihlanu i-50th cap yakhe lapho ayithola kule qembu lamabhokobhoko lokusho ukuthi stars mashaya inkundla nayo eScotland kuyaba nguye lo khola liqembu alithatha lifaka phakathi enkundleni kuyaba nje nguye umdlali leyo ngena phambili kunabo bonke utshengisa bona phela ukuthi uhlanganisa leyo midlalo lengamashumi lasihlanu nasibona nale qembu lemabhokobhoko iqembu lesandla kudlala ne-Wales iphinde futhi badlala nebafana bema All Blacks lapho sithaye khona ngescore lesembili stop imidlalo seNingizimu Afrika lencabanga ukuthi kube imidlalo lefike ngesikhathi esifanele iNingizimu Afrika iphutha perform yayo ngesikhathi esifanele ngemva ukuthi sidlale nayo imidlalo lebalekile siqasa nalo iqembu lesizwe leScotland belagcina kuba nempumelelo le-10 nayibukele eNingizimu Afrika ngonyaka yabo 2010 lokushona ukuthi angeke kube imidlalo lemalukana nani kulo iqembu lesizwe leScotland nasinze futhi sibuka le qembu umqeqeshi Jacques Minabe lalibemetele iqembu line-experience ngendlela lemangalisako lenginethemba lokuthi liyakhona ukuthi lidlale kahle kakhulu nalibukana nabo bafana beScotland kepha siphinde sikhumbule nemlaleli ukuthi ngenxa yokulimala our favorite number 10 laphana Andre Pollard akekho kepha umdlali weBulls laphana ngikhuluma ngabane liboko utendele umdlalo omkhulu kabi sukela atholile ithuba lokudlala kumabhokobhoko ukhona yaqasa nemidlalo kazi-ke siyabona ukuthi bafuna ukuletha nalawo ma-surprises yathi kuseNingizimu Afrika ebhenkini cishe iletha abadlali laba bangama-game changers buka nje uDenver Mnyele labaningi bangake balenzela ukuthi mhlamba ngaqasa ebhenkini usebhenkini laphana Denver Mnyele kuqasa laphana kunombolo 8 Jasper Vise longomnye abadlali lophakamisile isandla sakhe ngicabanga ukuthi uyadeserve ukuthi aqase nemidlalo lokho kusitshela ukuthi iNingizimu Afrika lithimba lebaqeqeshi bane-headache lenhle yebadlali ngoba nawubuka i-position i-competition yebadlali banaloku lesibita ukuthi it's a healthy competition kubo baqeqeshi ngoba nawubuka ngiyasivisa ubuke laphana Denver Mnyele ba-complementana kahle kakhulu nabo badlali ababili nawubuka nemidlalo lofana na-Malcolm Marx behlala sidla ngayo nakasuma laphana ebhenkini ngoba sathi kahle nasesifika laphana kuma-line out yathi kuzothola lawo ma-driving mall ngaye laphana Malcolm Marx kepha nako naye sukela aqale ukudlala kahle kakhulu uyalithola ithuba lokusaqasa lemidlalo njengoba uyaqalisa nawo umdlalo so ngokubuka kwami noXolo nabo bonke babukeli iNingizimu Afrika inamathuba lamahle ukuthi singaphinde futhi sende umlando sithathe kube kuhlandla lesine yona indlela yomhlaba kepha ama-All Blacks nawo ngamanye latimisele ukuthatha i-Rugby World Cup kwehlandla lesine nabo bacophela phana umlando kusho ukuthi ne-competition nematiba kakhulu nale ithembisa kuba exciting laphana eFrance ngomnyaka wa-2023
mangabe ke siza kuyibafana bafana nayo izodlala imidlalo yokungcweka ke efaka phakathi Namibia ungathini nje ngalomdlalo nanokuthi hey ngibona eyedwa vo nje umdlalo weKaizer Chiefs ofakwe eqenjini lesizwe bafana ngicabanga ukuthi itikhaze isemaseni trend asukela nje iviki licalile umqeqeshi ngaleso sikhathi amemetele leli qembu lakhe lokugcina labadlali abang-23 leyo basebenzisa kule midlalo lemibili lekuyaba imidlalo lebalekile ngoba itophinde futhi beyingxenye abayimfelelo yayo i-Africa Cup of Nations eCote d'Ivoire ngaphimbidlwana kulo mnyaka lesiya kuwo kube netinkulumo letiningi kakhulu kabi waphumela ebaleni umqeqeshi weBrusha acacisa kabanzi kokuthi bekasho kuthini kokuthi iKaizer Chiefs badlali babo abadeserve ukuthi bangaba kule squad sakhe kwenyalo uye waveta ukuthi kule mdlalo wabo la bekawuhambele khona bona khona ukuthi iKaizer Chiefs kusafanele ukuthi ithuthuke kakhulu njengeqembu ngoba inabadlali abaningi labasha basangekajeli basangedlali njengeqembu letinye tetizathu lethe lokungabada ukuthi akamboni umdlali weChiefs adeserve kwanyalo ukuthi angambita kule qembu lakhe labaningi babasebavula idebate ukuthi ngathi umqeqeshi akayihloniphi iKaizer Chiefs lokwanaloka but nangambuka umqeqeshi kunema-facts lawo avekile ukuthi kungani angakalithi neqembu leKaizer Chiefs futhi out of 12 points kule midlalo yokuqala elite iqembu lelina-4 points so uyabona lo mqeqeshi ukuthi akamani nje akhulume ukhuluma based on facts ngalaba emagama ngisho ukuthi umdlali nemidlali akade umbita iqembu lakhe kukhona lokuthithe lokuhle lelikwendawo ngako mina ngala Kaizer Chiefs nisane isikhathi ukuthi kufanele ni-improve as a team ukuze ukuthi mhlambe singaphinde futhi sinikeze abadlali ithuba lokuthi bathi bonakalise kulo qembu lesizwe ngicabanga ukuthi umqeqeshi weBrush akekho kulesikhundla sebafana ukuthi uthatha imali ayibuyise ekhaya eBelgium party uthatha konke nenhliziyo yakhe yonke uyibekile uya-investa laphana kulo qembu lesizwe ufuna ukubona i-improvement overall nakuzo wonke amaqembu ladlala ngaphansi kwe-PSL lokuphinde futhi kusitshele ukuthi kufanele bonke njengabaqeqeshi babambisane kude ukuthi nangabasho ukuthi kunema-issues lefanele a-address kube malula le-communication ibe khona letinye tezinto beselakhala ngaze kakhulu ukuthi uyafuna ukuba nemhlangano lebaqeqeshi labakhona ku-PSL kepha lokho kubukeka shengathi soloko kusasekhashana ukuthi access but ekugcineni ukhonele ukuthi abe nalo lelo qembu ngelishwa Thembazwane ube naleya injalo ayithola ngaleso sikhathi badlala naye Kaizer Chiefs kumlendo yokuqala ku-MTN 8 semi-final ngelishwa wakhahlela kabuhlungu laphana ngu-Yusuf Mathi
ngaphandle nje kwenhloso yokumlimatha uthi awuphuma lezo dinsuku 10 to 14 days wavulela umnyango kule modi lobonakala so far asadlala kahle kakhulu Kaizer Chiefs wambita lapha nomqeqeshi singathi ukuthi mhlambe bese kazama ukucisha lo mlilo lokhona neKaizer Chiefs noma vele kule modi bekaziserva ukuthi angabita uqinile Kaizer Chiefs nangibuta la ngimakhona nithi ukuthi together looking to ngicabanga ukuthi uyadeserva lapha kule modi ukuthi egcinene abite nanoma nje sekangena ekaqhamuka ngepreparatorize ukuthi kube umdlalo olimele but uyabona ukuthi umqeqeshi bekabanikile isikhathi sokuthi cha iChiefs kusafanele ukuthi ni-improve khathi sekhona ukuthi badlali beni ababala bangaya lapha ku AFCON banyalo kufanele ba-improve as a team siyokubona lokho ngokuhamba kwesikhathi alimonitor iqembu umqeqeshi ugophosha ngoba vele siyambona ukuthi imudleni iyayihambela imidlalo lemiside ye-PSL lesezingeni kubuka ukuthi mhlambe i-depth yakhe ebadlali inganani na waphinde futhi waphendula umbuto kulabo bizana imibuto ngemidlalo laphana we-Strasbourg eFrance laphana lebo umuthiba lo nesikhathi eside wangadlali Lyon bafana ngenxa yokulimala kepha ubuyile ubonakala asharp ubonakala afit wavalele amagoli ngelinye etinje lathi creditile lapha nomqeqeshi ukuthi labagadli lanabo nyalo bayamjabulisa engani ngoba ku club level baperforma kahle bayawavalela lawo magoli ngelinye etinje lekumela ukuthi akulangadelele kubukana nalamaqembu lamabili soba sidlala nawo Soweto.
Hayi ke sibonge kakhulu ke Senzo S ngesikhathi sakho sekufisele nje nosuku oluhle. Ake mbukelo besixoxisana naye uSenzo S Mashiho intatheli yendaba zemidlalo lapha eSABC. Ake njengamanje mbukelo sesifike kupheleni kohlelo lwethu ekhaya jikelele namhlanje sibonga kakhulu ngokuthi uhlanganyele kanye nathi.
Siyabonga nawe ngokuthi uhlanganyele nabo. Ake mbukelo masibone kwakhona ngomso Friday kuzawuqhaqa kunobathana kusalo nobangela. Sibambe ngazibini kuwe kaloku nakwiqhiza lonke le ekhaya jikelele. Kude kube ngomso makube chosi. Sale kahle.